FOS TV is brought to you by the Lion's Den. The Den always has been and always will be about enjoying family and friends in an environment steeped in Happy Valley tradition. So come back to the Den, the perfect place to recall old memories while creating new ones.
Mark Brennan of Fight on State here with our weekly Joe Paterno press conference wrap-up. Joined this week by Mike Poorman of StateCollege.com, longtime reporter covering Joe. Probably did as many one-on-one interviews with Joe as anybody down through the years. Mike, after the big loss to Alabama, what are your thoughts kind of on the way Joe looked and sounded today?
Well, you know, his the first thing I saw was his collar was so huge. There's a big gap there, so he's really lost a lot of weight. And I was thinking back a few years ago when he had put on a lot of pounds, and this has really taken a lot out of him.
Yeah, it's the whole injury thing, and it just seems like one thing after another hitting the guy. He said, we'll get into some of the meat and potatoes of what he had to talk about, but he's still insisting that there's a chance he could be on the sideline for this week's game with Temple. I just don't see it. I mean, we're here in the tunnel at Beaver Stadium. They still had to drive him in a van, and he's still using the cane. I don't know about you. I mean, I think it's going to be surprising if he gets on the sideline for the rest of the season.
Oh, well, I don't know about the rest of the season, but it's shocking. It's shocking now, but I think it's kind of, to be careful how to say this, but maybe not kidding himself, but unrealistically optimistic, not just about getting into the sidelines, but probably the way the situation is these days.
Yeah, and I think part of it goes back to in the preseason, he talked about how he really wanted the players to be tougher, and that he thought some guys were milking injuries a little bit, and I wonder if he's trying to send some sort of message, which he doesn't really have to do.
No, not at all. I think one of the biggest questions to me with him is he came into the season with a plan. He was going to get in shape, he was going to call plays, he was whipping everyone around, holding the assistant coaches accountable, and he needs a plan B, and I don't think he knows what his plan B is.
Yeah, let's get into some of the meat and potatoes of this press conference. Joe said that he thought both quarterbacks played well against Alabama. I think I would debate that. Going one of whatever McGloin was for no yards, I'm not sure how you can qualify that as well, even if there were drop passes. But the key is, it sounds like he's talking about playing with two quarterbacks going forward. That's the way he's talking.
He is, but I think he gave himself an out as far as playing Bolden will start. I think we all realize that. And given the option of playing Bolden more than two series. Last game they wanted to go 2-2. They promised that if Bolden gets on a roll, and I think the chances are probably better than not that he might, he'll stick with Bolden and then throw Matt in, once or twice. But I think he's gone off of that promising now.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the real key things out of this press conference. Sometimes, and you've been to enough of these, that you really have to listen to everything he said. He said going back to the Alabama game, he kind of second guesses himself, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't know if those were exact words, about taking Bolden out after the first two series. As you mentioned, he said going into the game, they really had a clear idea that it was going to be 2-2, and I get the sense now that if Bolden does get on a roll, as you said, that they may stick with him longer, and to me, that's kind of a significant development.
I think it's huge, and especially with, in that sense, Bolden has a real opportunity to have a good game against Temple, follow it up with Eastern Michigan, and then it'll be solidified. And I like your point about, where he was saying in hindsight, and we've learned through the years, sometimes it takes us a year or two to hear what he was thinking. So I think it's really insightful that a few days later he was acknowledging that he might have been second guessing himself.
Yeah, he talked about the Alabama game, obviously, and I think he was happy with the toughness, and I think he should have been happy. I don't think this team rolled over in any respect. They were playing hard toward the end. He was unhappy with one defensive series, but once again, it comes down to playmaking. And as almost cliche and as easy as that sounds, it really is what this team has to start doing. Picking off passes, you watch some of these other games, and guys are making plays. That's what Penn State has to do.
And is it nature or nurture? And right now, it's not the nature of the team, so it has to be nurtured. And I think that's part of the big question is how as a head coach do you change things around and work with your staff and work with the players and motivate and also do some strategy to make these things happen. And they're not able to nurture those things to happen these days.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing too. I mean, once you start making them, I think that it'll continue and these guys get the confidence and that sort of thing. But, clearly it's not quite there yet in these big games. He also said today, Neil Rudell asked him about their lack of success in big games in recent years, and he admitted that, they've not been as successful as they would hope, and that's something where they clearly have to do better.
No, I think it was a good question by Neil, and I think Joe went 80% of the way there and acknowledged that. And again, I think that's a big acknowledgement on his part to agree with that theorem, because I know we've seen through the years where you come to the table with an idea and he's going to spend half his time arguing against it, even if he thinks you're right.
Yeah, in terms of some housekeeping, Joe said it sounds like Stephon Green is not going to be with the team this week. I'm sorry, I almost made a Freudian slip and said this week against Temple, but he definitely left open the door for him to return, which is good. I mean, I really do hope that the kid makes it back. I'm not sure what your take is. I mean, he's obviously done some stupid things, but has always seemed like a nice kid, and you would hope that he's able to wrap up his career on a positive note.
Yeah, I mean, he has an engaging personality. He's a hard kid not to like, and he's enthusiastic. I think he's a team guy, at least from after game interviews. He's always been. Yep. So you kind of root for him, even though there's some silly things there. And I think, from a standpoint, they need a change of pace guy back there. People are in love with Silas Red, and I think after the first drive, he carried the ball 9 times for 18 yards. They need someone else in there now, whether it's Beacham or not, for a change of pace, but it just didn't work.
Yeah, the other thing, and I'm a big Silas Red fan, and I would argue that it may have had more to do with Alabama adjusting and their defense playing better against an offensive line that's still coming together. But the other thing that jumped out to me, this could be the best Temple team, or this is the best Temple team that Joe's ever seen.
Yeah, I think he was very clear about that, even though he's had one or two tough games back when Wayne Harden coached. And I believe that was before the turn of the century, so it's been a long time.
Well, Bob Flounders had a great tweet during the press conference. I'm not sure if you followed it. Bob Flounders of the Patriot News saying, I'm pretty sure this was the best Indiana State team he had ever seen. And this isn't a knock on Temple, but listen, if Penn State hopes to be the team that it wants to be, this is a game where they have to go down there and make a statement. I get that this is a really good Temple team, very well coached Temple team. He spoke about the way that Al Golden left the cupboard kind of full down there, and he absolutely did. But you know what? You come off of a game like this out here where you lose at home in front of that kind of crowd. I think it's imperative for this team to go down and not only win at Temple, but win in dominating fashion. I'm not sure what your take is.
Well, no, I think you're right. It's up to the captains and the seniors, but ultimately it's up to Joe to make sure those things happen. You probably had the opportunity. Adazio was here, as Joe mentioned, in the summer, and he had the question and answer. And I grabbed him and had about 10 minutes with the guy, and he was on a conference call the other day. It's like, wow, I'm going to go play for him. He's terrific, and I think he's genuine. I think he's a guy to pick up from where Al was, and just advance the idea and enthusiasm, and really keep it at the level Golden had, and maybe take it a step higher.
Yeah, the fact that they're able to get the level of coach in there that they've gotten the last few years. Al Golden was a very highly regarded assistant, and obviously this guy, I know that his time had kind of come to the end at Florida, but that was more because of a coaching change there than anything else. Temple obviously has stepped it up, ramped it up from a coaching perspective. Anything else jump out at you before we wrap up from the press conference today?
No, we both covered it for so long, and I think to a certain degree there's some resignation on Joe's part, and he doesn't. He's speaking in broad platitudes. We need not to have turnovers. We need to do this. I get the sense that he's still casting about. I think he's, when you look at 78 when they lost to Alabama, he brooded for a long time, and I think he's at the point where he just can't turn on a dime and say, "Hey, this is what I saw. This is what I saw for 2011." I don't think he knows what's going to happen, how he's going to make things happen given this situation. Passing notes in the press box during the game is certainly not the leadership he thought he'd be having.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and we'll wrap up on that note in that he, out at Big Ten Media Days, he clearly looked and sounded better. I think he really did want to get on the sideline and be more involved. And he actually had the comment, which I think he would step back a little bit from, that the assistant's day in the sun was over. I don't think he meant it the way it was delivered. No. I think he was trying to get across that he needed to be more involved. And you're right. You look at the TV replay and you see him up in the press box, and unless they're getting the worst views of him, he's just standing there or sitting there, no glasses on, no headset, does not appear to be engaged with everybody. And again, I know that we're only seeing what the TV folks are showing us, but...
Well, I asked Galen after the game, and I said, what about Joe? He goes, well, he's passing notes when he sees something. It's like, passing notes. Third grade, that's cool, but not when there's 110,000 people there and you got to make a split second decision.
Yeah, and we've, frankly, and I don't want to get on a bashing Joe thing here, but we've seen it even when he was on the sideline, the lack of communication and the way things just haven't quite worked out. And now that he's in the press box, you look at those situations with the timeouts, and he's kind of saying that a couple of them at least were with player injuries. And at the end of the day, that all comes down to coaching. I mean, if the players aren't doing what they should be doing, somebody should have coached them up to do it.
No, you're right, and I don't think we're bashing Joe. We're just explaining where it's at. And when you look back down, I've seen recently some documentaries, some tapes from the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
He's on the sideline. He's calling play, and he's grabbing this guy, telling the play, giving him instructions on the end, turning around to something else. I mean, he was running the show. He's in the huddle before a kickoff yelling at the guys. I mean, that's who he was, and that's how he got it done. And, I don't think he's gotten to the point now where he's figured out that he's the CEO. He's the Jerry Jones of the team at best.
Yeah, Mike Poorman would know. He's done probably more one-on-one interviews with Joe than anybody else. Also, you can see his work at statecollege.com. And also, for people who don't know, he teaches the Joe Paterno in the media class. What's the name of that course?
Joe Paterno, Communications and the Media. I mean, Joe's a case study. We follow the coverage of media back from the 1940s when he played in high school and was in the New York Times to, how they covered the game on Sunday. And look at the changes, how media's changed, and obviously how Joe's changed too.
Well, this week you're going to be able to pop this YouTube video on, and all your students could watch Mr. Poorman handling the Joe Paterno discussion. Mike, thanks for joining us this week.
Mark. Thanks, Mark. We look forward to having you to class. You're one of our favorite guest lecturers.
I can't wait. It's going to be fun. Everybody out there, we appreciate you being with us again. I know we went a little long this week, but we'll be back next week wrapping up the Temple game and looking ahead to Eastern Michigan. Thanks.